De er klar, Jacob.
Mr. Ambassador, dear Stephen, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Aarhus City Hall. This is a fitting setting for a big warm farewell to one of the most popular ambassadors in Denmark ever. We have had the privilege of celebrating the 75th anniversary of this building that stands as an icon of Danish design and architecture. So it's quite fitting for celebrating also a diplomatic relations between Denmark and the United States that goes back for more than 200 years, and where you, Rufus, has held the position for the last years in a way that has made every single Dane, I believe, aware of the close connection between the US and Denmark. And I think I speak for all the citizens of Aarhus that we have felt a keen interest from your side in the city's life and in connecting the city of Aarhus to the US in new ways and in a way where we are mutually stronger due to your work. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to welcome you and everybody else to this event. I believe that right now we're in a situation in the world where the cooperation between nations are more important than ever. The uncertainty and the risk of things going wrong has perhaps not been bigger since the Second World War, and therefore it's more important now than ever that we are cooperating and that we get to understand the motives behind the actions that we encounter, both in our everyday lives, but also when we look at the international relations and the cooperation between countries. You have, I think, set a new standard for public diplomacy, and you have given a lot of yourself and Stephen. You've given an insight to how an ambassador works, and you have won every single heart of the Danish people. And at the same time, you have been a great representative for your countries and for the American values that we share in many respects, but also I through our conversations had the experience that you really understand the Danish people, and in record time you perhaps gotten to understand us better than most people will do over a lifetime if you're not born and raised here in Denmark. So it's been a pleasure and a privilege. It's also a little bit sad to say farewell, and I wish you and Stephen the best of luck in the time to come, and I hope to see you many times in Aarhus, perhaps in a new capacity or just as a guest in the city. So welcome to you and welcome to everybody else. Thank you.
I would also like to welcome you, Mr. Ambassador Rufus Gifford. At TV2 Østjylland, we are honored to welcome you back, and thank you, Mayor Jacob Bundsgaard, for letting us enjoy the event in this extremely beautiful room. Last time we enjoyed your visit, it was 3 months ago in October. At the university, we were confirmed just how popular and loved you are among many, many Danes. This time, as well as the last time, the tickets for the event were snatched away in just a few hours. Everybody loves Rufus. I doubt that many Danes know the first name of any other foreign ambassador in Denmark, not even the ones from our neighbor countries. And before you, we didn't know the name of the American ambassador neither. You have changed the role for an ambassador. You have made it kind of a common property. You appear all over in my newsfeed. I have seen endless numbers of selfies starring you and an average Dane, and I believe that no other American, no matter how big a rock star, has been given as many autographs in Denmark as you have. Your unpretentious way of being is the reason why you fit so well to the Danish society. We like it the uncomplicated and the accessible way. It is beyond doubt that your time as an ambassador in Denmark has increased the common interest in both American society, politics, and diplomatic tasks as well. An ambassador is no longer a mysterious man eating Swiss chocolate. Now an ambassador is a man like us who you can talk to and you can meet with evenly, like tonight. It is clear to all who have followed you since the election that you and Stephen will miss Denmark. I'm not afraid to say on behalf of many Danes that it's likewise. And to all of you in the audience, I hope that you will enjoy the next 2 hours in good company and that you will use the opportunity to ask Rufus anything on the Twitter wall, like usual when Rufus comes to town. Welcome and have a good evening.
Med den amerikanske ambassadør Rufus Gifford og special guests. Om lidt så skal vi tale amerikansk, men I får lige lidt praktisk på dansk. Aftens samtale er delt op i 2 med en pause, hvor der også er sandwich og vand. Og der er høflig selvbetjening, som man skal tage til, man synes det er pinligt. Vi lægger ud med at tale om præsidentvalget i USA og ambassadør for verden og for USA. Og efter pausen, så skal vi høre meget mere om hans forhold til Danmark og til Østjylland, og hvorfor det er så svært at sige. Det foregår på vores hedder under hashtag farvel Rufus. Og så er der også mulighed for i slutningen af begge sessions at stille spørgsmål fra salen. I må meget gerne stille dem på engelsk, men hvis I synes, det er for svært, så stil dem på dansk, og så skal jeg forsøge at oversætte så godt jeg kan. Og så for en god ordens skyld vil jeg huske at sige, at for dem af jer, der gerne vil møde ambassadøren bagefter, tage en selfie eller få en lille snak med ham, så bliver der mulighed for det efter arrangementet kl. 19:30. So, now I'll switch to American and say a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Ambassador, if you'll step up here.
Tusind tak.
Let's begin with your view on American politics.
Oh, fun.
Yep.
Good place to start.
Where were you on election night?
Can I just say first, it's before I answer that very tough question, which I won't get quite so emotional about. I am just, Stephen and I are so a week from Friday. This 3.5 years has been just probably, and I won't speak for Stephen, but I think I can. But 3.5 of the most remarkable years of our lives, and we are eternal. Who welcomed us so warmly and treated us like part of this greater family. And we will never forget it. We will absolutely never forget it. And certainly, you know, I think I've said this here in Aarhus before, but one of the first articles about me it was written, and I was called the Smiling Ambassador. And here we are in Smiletsbu. So I think the Smiling Ambassador fits in real well in the city of smiles. So I am very, very sad to be saying goodbye to this wonderful city that I've had so many. I've run half marathons in and visited all your wonderful museums and various cultural institutions in your neighborhoods and eaten in your restaurants. And so thank you. And vi vil sauna, yeah. But now on to...
We'll talk more about that in the second session.
Of course we will.
Then
I know.
I will see if I can make you cry.
I know. You probably will. That's not going to be hard. Thank you for always hosting us in such a beautiful way. I had so hoped to be here at the launch of the cultural capital on the 21st, but Stephen and I are actually going to be in New Zealand. So it's but well, again, I'm sure we're going to get to that
we'll
too.
We'll get to that too.
Okay, sorry, election night.
Election
I apologize.
night. Where were you?
So this is where we were. It was a very was one of the toughest diplomatic nights of my life, and I'll say this. This is why. So, me, like everybody else, thought the election was going to go a certain. Donald Trump, like virtually the entire planet, thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. Meaning all of us knew what we were going to say at the various events that we had to do. As ambassador, and then, which I did all of in Copenhagen, and then we went back. We actually, for the first time ever, stayed in a hotel room at the Marriott in Copenhagen because we had such an early morning, and just the 20 minutes between the house and downtown, could have used that 20 minutes of sleep. And we came back and started to watch the returns. And I knew that I had to at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I got back to the room at about 2. And I knew it at 6 o'clock in the morning I had to go to Politikenshus and give a talk about what all of us thought was going to be a Clinton victory and what does this mean for the United States. And over the course of those 4 hours, you saw this slow and steady march towards a Trump presidency. I hadn't slept at that point in 24 hours almost. And I had to take a shower, put on a new suit, and have the video cameras around me.
And act like everything was okay.
And you know, I think that would have been insincere because I think everybody was shocked. So, yes, of course everything's going to be okay. But I also had to go, I believe very much that I always have to be myself. And Danes know how I feel, I think. But I did have to project confidence. And I couldn't let the emotion on the inside really come out on the outside. Stephen says that morning he's never seen me look so terrible. Which wasn't very nice, but I don't blame him. And then and then I had to go to Politikenshus, and it was a packed house. It was completely full of hundreds of Danes just sort of staring and wanting answers. And from there, I had to go to the Marriott, which was a embassy-sponsored event with, I think it was 800 people. People coming up to in those moments there. And then we realized that Stephen and I actually had to pack our bags and leave in 10 weeks. And at the same time, I had to project the diplomatic strength. I had to project what is the most important, which is to put the personal stuff aside, to put the personal feelings aside, to put the personal emotion aside as much as possible. And remember that you are in this job, that you're an ambassador in some ways first, and that you are always Barack Obama's representative, that I will always be Barack Obama's representative. And I wanted to handle that situation with a class and dignity that Barack Obama has handled this transition every single moment of. And so that's what I tried to do. Whether or not I succeeded, I don't know. But it was it was easily 12 hours of my ambassadorship, I think.
We've had a couple of months now to get used. He's going to be the president of the United States. He's going to have one of the most powerful jobs in the world. How do you predict the next 4 years is going to?
I think that it's one of the things that's really, really important to know. There's a few different things. The fact that the campaign rhetoric, some of it is just not real. And
I wonder if he can separate those.
Well, I think that, and I will say this, and I said that. And at times, he doesn't. Because I think somehow he has to going to be president. And some of this, what I would call sort of I don't know whether you're Night Live. I mean, just some of it is not what we need. We need to understand who he is going to be as president. Now, that's the first thing that we have from this to you. I promise you, is not going to change. When I know what Donald Trump has said about it, I know all of that. But I believe in all of my heart, knowing how the U.S. government is the cornerstone of our military and I know that. I know that, Donald Trump has said on the campaign that he thinks waterboarding should be brought back. Yet his attorney general testified yesterday, saying that he thought it was already at this place where there is kind of a lack of clarity about what the Trump administration is going to be. I frankly believe, I do believe this, that so much of the campaign rhetoric is just simply not real. That what you are seeing of a Trump of what we've heard previously, and also that will be the priority of Congress, and Congress will want to try to put the presidency in that direction. The United States, the way I describe it, is we're like an aircraft carrier. We are very hard to turn, very hard to turn, and with good reason. A lot of people say, people ask me, what's the most time in a years or so? And I would agree with you. And why is that? To move the country as president. The United
Do you
States
think Donald Trump
complicated.
understands that? Because he doesn't seem to have much patience.
Well, and I don't mean that's not. It's the truth is, Barack Obama this to the White House, thinking promises. He wants to close Guantanamo. Here, almost 8 years later, he is still trying to close Guantanamo. It is one of the top priorities of his presidency. He will say to you right now, if he was sitting here, he would say closing Guantanamo is one of the top priorities of his next 9 days. And sometimes it is just butting your head against the wall of the United government experience. Barack Obama had tons of government experience. That unilateral action as president is very, very difficult, especially if you have a Congress and potentially a court system that opposes you. So, as he wants to do, so let's build the wall, right? Let's build this big, beautiful wall we hear about that Mexico is going to pay for.
No, wait, Americans are going to pay for it now.
Well, now they are, right? So it's already, the campaign rhetoric is different from the reality. And who's going to pay for it? Which Americans are going to pay for it? Congress is going to do we really think, does anyone in this billions and billions of dollars to promise? It's just not going to happen. It's the reality of the U.S. government. Hate it or love it, it's just who we are. To build a wall on the Mexican border, and he's even admitted now part of it can be a fence. So it's all.
Well, that changes everything.
Well, no, it's just the whole thing is what I mean. I want everyone, and trust me, I hear you, but I do want everyone to take a breath, because I think the fundamental nature of your question is, how is this going to change the relationship between the United States and Denmark, right?
That was actually a Twitter question. I don't know if you saw that over your shoulder. Yep.
Yeah, Matthias, thank you for the question. But this is what I believe. So fundamentally, there's two ways you can really change the American-Danish bilateral relation. Take the brand part away. And the first would be NATO. The first would be the NATO partnership. The second would be trade. Those would be the two things that I would argue, and maybe something having to do with the Arctic as well. So that could be the third, slightly less significant, but also realistic. NATO, I already spoke about. I don't think that fundamentally changes under the Trump administration in any way. I think that trade from a larger standpoint, could be impacted on the American side, meaning the Americans, just like the Europeans, protectionist come out of the United States than we've seen out of the Obama administration. All that much. I gave a speech to a group of largely Danish CEOs this morning in Copenhagen, and told them that I think this is a great time to do everything you can to get Danish green renewable technology in the United States. The event was hosted by Dong Energy this morning, and they're building they're building hopefully what will be the first commercial offshore wind farm in the United States. We do not have a single offshore wind farm in the United States, not one. But you know who has them? Denmark. And you know who knows how to build them? Denmark. You know who doesn't know how to build them? The United States. So come, bring your technology, and help us build them. Do it. So I will say, I don't think, especially in the short term, that there will be fundamental difference between the U.S. and Denmark. I mean, the one biggest difference between the U.S. and Denmark will be me. I won't be here anymore. But everything else will be the same. Yeah.
There has been quite a bit of press about the people he has chosen for his cabinet. On some of his choices. Chosen, as I have read, older white men and his son-in-law.
I honestly think I've read that. But I mean, there are women in his cabinet. There are. I think if you look at the most powerful positions, so state, defense, treasury, yes, they're all white men, but they're all white men now in the Obama administration. I don't think that is a. I do believe this. I don't think that the racial breakdown or the gender breakdown of his cabinet is. I mean, I personally think administrations. What I do think is a kind of brand of people that he'd like to have serving as his cabinet. And I think that's where we've seen some confirmation hearings happen the last couple of days. I think what would have been my future boss, the Secretary of State, confirmation hearing is happening right now in the Senate. I was actually just watching literally on my ride over here, Marco Rubio, who's a Republican senator, question Rex Tillerson, who is the very toughly on Putin. Very, very strongly. So it will be interesting to see how these confirmation hearings play out. I don't think they'll necessarily be easy. I would guess that there would probably be a couple that don't make it through the confirmation.
We have another question from Dina Axelsen.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Hopefully not 8.
Yeah. I think this is the way I'm going to answer that question. It's one of the things that, and I will say this, that I learned this here in Denmark actually really early on in my time. And it's something people have been talking about for a while. But no one's really that this election changes. It is that finally, fundamentally, people understand that the level of distrust in institutions and the establishment is so high that we or frankly, if you're sitting in around the world and you think everything is great because you've got 2% growth and under 5% unemployment, I would take another look, because that's what we have. And then you saw the level of has in our system, and you have to ask yourself why. Weird way to answer your question, because I actually think that you're wanting me to say something very positive about what Trump is going to bring to the country. There's so many unknowns that I don't want to answer it that way. But what I do think he has to do, what I think he has done, and what I think this election will do, is really get us as Americans to focus on this issue and to try to hopefully win and build trust back between the people and the institutions. Just a really brief story about my time here. And this is it's a different situation. When I first arrived, I traveled all over the country, including to Aarhus, and wanted to meet people. And, in diplomatic style, the very open diplomatic style we have. And I found that people had no clue what we did, not a clue. And what they did think we did was completely wrong. So, they were sort of interested as well. So there was this kind of sense that ambassadors were, who is it that said that I just ate Swiss chocolates all day? I love that. So it's like, it was usually, there was this sense that we'd play golf all day, and then, go to cocktail parties at night and eat Ferrero Rocher, which I had never had actually until I came to Denmark. And then, every once in a while, maybe when we had a break or two, we'd go to that hideous building on Dag Hammarskjolds Allé in Copenhagen. You've seen the U.S. Embassy in Copenhagen. Do nefarious things. We try to make your life miserable. I arrived during the NSA Snowden scandal. So there was, there's this sense was, well, what do you do other than tap our phone lines? And so, and the whole sense was so ridiculous. It was so not based in fact. It was so not based in reality. And so the reason why we have done what we have done, and let's be clear that we don't do that. That is just not what we do. And the idea was to try to show people what we do. That there are 150 people who wake up every single morning, and they are 50% Americans, 50% Danes, who their entire job, their purpose, professional purpose, is to figure out how to make this relationship between the United States and Denmark. And I wanted to tell that story. Wouldn't that build back trust in institutions? Wouldn't that build back trust in the largest and least sexy bureaucracy in the world, which is the U.S. government? So let's tear down this wall. Ask me tonight. Let's put ourselves out there. Let's lead with our heart. I know it's a really long way to answer that question.
How do you see Donald Trump doing that? Because I see that he speaks to people in a different way.
Yeah.
You felt him more than you felt Hillary Clinton when you watched the. So is that what might be his strength? That
Partially.
He can talk to people so you clearly understand what he means.
Partially. I think he tapped into something, and Bernie Sanders did as well. And everybody, people wrote off Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in an offensive. Their politics, whether you love them or hate them. People wrote off Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, but they saw something in the American population that no one else saw, which was the sense that certain people felt left behind. Even with our good economic numbers, and we have good economic numbers, people felt left behind, and they tapped into it. So yes, is the answer to your question. We can all have a debate whether or not Donald Trump actually spoke truth, whether or not he actually believed what he said. But the truth is, what he was saying resonated with people, and it felt real, and it didn't feel like a politician was saying it. And that is why I think he is now 9 days away from sitting in the Oval Office.
The question
also
is the
connected to, I should say this too, connected to the fact that Hillary in so many ways represented the exact opposite of that. She was, a career politician. She'd been in all of the things that people thought were her strengths. Really ended up being one of the reasons why she lost, which is her representing the establishment in every single possible way.
The question is how the Republican Party is going to hear what he says. Because the question is from Stephen Jensen. How do you think Trump will cooperate with the Republican Party, which gave him a hard time on the election?
It will be really interesting. I think it will be. I look at Russia. Look at the issue with Russia. I mentioned the Secretary of State hearing that I just was listening to on their way over here. I think that the Republican Party will be very much at odds with at least the rhetoric Trump has used in recent months vis-a-vis Putin. The Republican Party more broadly in Congress will definitely want to try to keep a more status quo and maybe even slightly more negative or slightly more skeptical, I should say, relationship with Russia. So I think that they will. I think that the Republicans in Congress will take him on from time to time. I do. I think Trump will take on the congressional Republicans from time to time. This is not going to be, Reagan and the Capitol Republicans, who they were so unified politically. This is not, people will say that the Democrats are floundering and the Republicans are really flying high. I do not see it that way. I think the Republicans had a good election. There's no doubt about it. But they still have a real, they're going to have a hard time really fundamentally getting people to understand what the values of the party are. Who are they? Are they Trump's party? Are they Reagan's party? Are they W. Bush's party? Are they Paul Ryan's party? Those are all very, very different political stances as far as I'm concerned.
So how are they going to fix that? It's going to be a tightrope walk for them.
It is.
Because they have the president with the right party, but maybe not with the same policy.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But that's what leadership is. To me, that's what I think we need more of. I think that it's what you need on both the Democratic and Republican side are real, true leaders who convince people that their way is the right way. And I hope it happens. I do, because I think and look at the Democratic side. It's hard to point, other than Obama, it is hard to point to a unifying voice I can't point to it in the Republican Party either, to be honest. But you can't point to, other than Obama, a leader that will unify sort of the American left. You can't. They're not there. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are popular, but they're also alienating to a good chunks of the American left as well. So it'll be an interesting few years to see what happens. We've had, yeah. It's a. We have one. Had one. Resigned after one. What's that? Oh, and died. Yeah, that's different.
All right, so he didn't have a chance to try to get reelected. That's true. But there hasn't been one who said 4 years is enough. I'm going back to my gold palace.
Yeah, it's yeah. It's I don't know the issue. I doubt it. I think I doubt it. But I don't know. I've never met the man. We'll see. We'll see whether how well he does in the job. I think it is hard when you become president of the United. Now remember, he'll be old, and it's. So I do think that there could be a health argument to be made.
70s are the new 50s.
Yes. Yes, but I can tell you this, knowing how tired I get in this job, I can tell you that at 78, having literally so many people's lives counting and resting on decisions you make, that's a lot for a 78-year-old every day.
So his thought of downtime is not going to happen.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
We've gotten to the point where people here can ask questions. My colleague over here, Uffe, is going to walk around. So if you have a question for the ambassador that you'd like to ask that hasn't been on Twitter, I'll let you know. The reason we're looking over here is because I have a TV screen over here with very big letters, so I can see what tweets there are, so we don't have to turn around. We have a question right here.
I just want to know, will we be seeing you running for president? And would you run if it was against Michelle Obama?
The answer to the second question is definitely not. But the unfortunate reality of the premise of the question, which is Michelle Obama running for president, and the answer is no. I can't imagine, something would have to change dramatically to get Michelle Obama to want to run for public office. She is everything you see she is. She does not have political ambition. She is just a good person. And isn't that sort of, I think I'm not saying that having political ambition doesn't make you that you can be both, but she does it because she believes in it. She has no interest in running for office.
Do you have an interest?
I never, before I got to Denmark, I never thought that I would ever consider running for office. That's the truth. But now, after the election, it is something that we are considering.
Well, that's a new answer from last time. So what made you decide this? Thank you for the very good question, by the way.
So I'm going to talk about it this way. I will say that it's when I worked for Barack Obama for 10 years. I started working for him. I was with him when he announced his first run for president in Springfield, Illinois in 2007. I am still working for him, and will be working for him every single day of his presidency. It will be 10 years. We fly out on January 20th. In that 10 years, I have fought for his vision of what he thinks his vision for the United States. So those are things like Obamacare. Those are things like a green future for the U.S. Those are things, of course, like a modern foreign policy with countries like Iran and Cuba, as well as gay marriage and things like that. I simply can't sit quietly in a nice, peaceful job where I make some money if that legacy is in some way at risk. So I feel like, and I know Stephen feels the same way, because I think if you had asked us on November 7th what we were going to do, we might have said, we've loved living in Europe. Maybe we'll go move to London and find a great job working for a company that we believe in. But now we know that we have to go home. We do. Because this legacy that I think both of us believe in with all of our heart very well could be at risk. And I would be a hypocrite if I Because I've gone around to gymnasiums and universities and everywhere all over Denmark, and I've essentially said, I've followed my heart, I've done what I believed in, I've worked, and if I don't right now, even at 42, and I am pretty tired, I have to be honest, 10 years of working for Obama, I'm pretty tired, but I still have fight left in me, and I feel like now's not the time to stop fighting. So that's but I don't know what the answer is. So I don't know if it is running for office. I really don't. We have not made that decision.
So you might be the first gentleman.
Oh wait,
of
let's
the
be
White
clear.
House.
We are not talking.
Instead
We are not talking about president. That's like
We're not talking
That's
about
a really
president. I
big.
thought
That's
that's
a really big leap. No, this. We'd have
So
to
what
start.
are we talking about?
Well, we need to change the subject. But I won't be running for president. We won't be talking.
Wait, didn't you all hear
Yeah.
him say he was going to run for president?
No, I said office. It's different.
So what office?
No, it would be, you would have to start smaller, governor, senator, something.
So start
go away.
smaller and then maybe
Change the subject. Got new door, allesammans.
All right. Do we have another question? Anybody else want to ask Rufus Gifford if he's going to be president one day? We have a question down here.
Jeg træder lige. Ja.
Yeah, you said on your book that American policy is like, it's more tough than House of Cards. And I really wondering, I have watched the series and I loved it, and I was like, wow, how can that be? Can you say more about it? And yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny because the book was written before the Trump phenomenon. And I think that it's so there's so much when I go back and remember what we said in the book that doesn't feel all that relevant anymore because he has been such a different kind of politician. I asked the creator of House of Cards, just like someone might say that the character in Bond led the way to Helle Thorning-Schmidt becoming prime minister because it sort of made people more comfortable with the female prime minister. There have been arguments that we saw black presidents in series like 24 and others actually. And did that make the United States more comfortable with the idea of having a black president? I actually don't believe any of those stories, but I did ask the creator of House of Cards if Kevin Spacey character actually paved the way for Donald Trump, and he just buried his head in his hands because he hadn't thought about that, and said, "Oh God, I hope not." So the answer to the question is, look, House of Cards is drama. It's just drama, but it's so there's a lot less murder in real life. There's a lot less,
Is that the only difference?
No, I think, but look, the thing about American politics is that anytime you are that close, when there's that much at stake, meaning American politics, especially at the federal level, there's so much power. And if you have the wrong people involved and too close to power, I think it can get nasty. And I've been there. And it's hard. It is hard. It's tough. It's competitive. And I say all these things, and those are the people who are in your political party, not even the people on the other side of the aisle. So it is challenging. Yeah. I mean, American politics is what we call a blood sport. And if you want it, you have to be prepared for the hard parts, that this is not Mr. Smith Goes to Washington anymore, not American politics. This is not the idealistic version of politics, that the personal smears, the lies, now the constant Twitter and Facebook and everything reality or false reality is so much a part of it. And it does become difficult. One of the reasons why politics chases out a lot of people who would be great, wonderful public servants, because they just don't want that spotlight. They don't want their spouse in that spotlight. They don't want their kids in that spotlight. And so when I say that I think American politics is worse than House of Cards, that's kind of what I mean. It's again not that it's not nearly as conspiratorial or dramatic. If you actually did follow people around the White House all day long, it would be exceptionally boring. And that's, but it is, there is some real toughness about American politics that sometimes I think, unless you've actually been inside, it's hard to fully understand.
All right, we are actually.
Oh, is it break time already?
It's break time already. I will read you a tweet, though. It says, "Thank you so much for the great ambassador and human being you have been in your work in Denmark." So we'll go to break on that, and when we come back, we're going to hear more about the ambassador's relationship with Denmark and Aarhus, and the inevitable goodbye. We will also meet Rufus Gifford's husband, Stephen, and their good friend, Nikolaj Wammen, who we know as the former mayor of Aarhus and the Minister of Defense, and they will share some of their stories. And for those of you who would like a selfie or a chat with the ambassador, that will be possible after the next session, so at 7:30, and not during this break. I know there are sandwiches and some drinks behind the curtain back there. Restrooms are over here. Smoking is outside. And remember your ID so you can get back in. And we'll see you again at 6:40. Thank you. klar? Thank you for returning after the sandwich for the second part of our talk with the ambassador, Rufus Gifford. We are now going to talk about the goodbye, the inevitable goodbye. Your time here in Denmark as ambassador is coming to an end. How does that work? You said somebody told you the day after the election you're leaving. Did you quit? Or did you get fired?
Yeah. The answer to the question is I resigned. Had I asked for an extension, I don't think I would have received it. So, but you may have read there was quite a public story in the New York Times and many other picked up by a number of publications that the president-elect has told all politically appointed ambassadors that they had to come home on January 20th. I don't know if that's true or not. I believe it is true. I can't account for all the facts in the story. I know that on the day after the election, even the morning of November 9th, I looked at Stephen and said, at one point, I said, maybe we should consider staying here. And not as an ambassador, but it just became very clear that it was time for us to leave, and the time for us to leave was January 20th. And
how did that become very clear?
It was a personal decision for us.
And that date is important because that's when that's
correct.
When President Obama has to.
Yes, and we take off at 5:15 on next Friday, which will be 45 minutes before the swearing in. And so I will be able to say that I've represented Barack Obama for all but 40, assuming we take off on time, that I represent Barack Obama for all but 45 minutes of his presidency, and that's something that I will be proud of my whole life.
It's also kind of symbolic that you choose to leave on that day pretty much to the minute.
Perhaps, but I have to be honest that I don't think had I asked to leave on the 21st, I don't think that I would have been allowed to. So I do believe that even though this was a personal decision of ours, that had I wanted to stay even till the 21st, I would have been told no.
We have a question on Twitter. It says, why not stay in Denmark? I like to believe that you and Stephen have been offered work here. We've thought about that. Is the truth. We've thought about considering we built just such wonderful connections with Danes. We have Danish friends. But listen, I say this, we are going to leave Denmark on January 20th, and physically, but we will never actually leave Denmark. It's impossible. When a country and their people have infected your heart the way that Denmark has infected Stephen and mine, you don't ever leave. You just don't. And I mean, we are American and proud. I mean, I am a proud, patriotic American. And I love my country for all of its challenges. And actually, I love it because of its challenges at times. But we just have to. We just have to go home. I think that it's if there is no other, it would have been easier to stay here, I think, had the election gone the other way. But now, it's just the answer just seems so clear to us that we have to go home, despite how hard it is. I mean, Stephen and I become emotional every single day thinking about leaving. Most of it, frankly, has to do with what Danes are saying to us about how our time has been meaningful to people. It's been a very, very intense few weeks. But we don't doubt the decision to leave. We think it's the right thing to do. We're going to talk more about that when Stephen comes up here too. But what happens in the period between you leaving and you're giving him about 15 minutes to find a new ambassador?
No. So the way it works, it's actually quite simple. So I have a DCM, a Deputy Chief of Mission. She is absolutely wonderful. She's a career Foreign Service officer. From the moment I am wheels up, she will be what we call a chargé d'affaires, which is an acting ambassador. And she will be that until the new ambassador arrives, whenever that is. And the embassy will continue to function. We have Billy and Vivica and Alistair all here wandering around this beautiful room, and they've all been working at the embassy for some time, and they will be continuing to work at the embassy on January 21st and afterwards. As I think I said already, the only thing different between the embassy from January 19th to January 21st is one person, just me. The rest of the embassy will be functioning exactly as it did before.
What will it be like? Because one thing is saying goodbye to Denmark and the people that you've met, but what's it going to be like to say goodbye to the job? You're also leaving a profession.
Yes. I can't overstate how meaningful this job has been for me personally and professionally. I've learned so much. And I've learned so much, and I know this, I've learned so much from the people around me. And I was a 38-year-old political appointee when I started this, and I didn't know how to be an ambassador. I didn't. But I knew that for me to be successful, what I would have to do is rely on the expertise of the amazing men and women who work at the embassy. So these are, Billy's American, Vivica's Danish, Alistair's actually Scottish, but has lived in Denmark for a long time. But the truth of the matter is that they're the people that I've been leaning on for 3.5 years and learning so much from. And so when you say, I miss the job, but I'm going to miss the people more. At some point, the job is just, so I will miss the job. I'll miss the job tremendously, but I miss the personalities more than anything else, because that's what's made the job special. And that's not just the people in the embassy, but also the people outside the embassy too.
And one of those people outside the embassy, thank you for the little help here, is a person we know very well here in Aarhus, who I believe have become a personal friend of yours.
Yes, indeed.
So let's invite Nikolaj Wammen on stage. Former mayor of Aarhus, for those of you, well, there's none of you that don't know that, probably. So, tell us, Nikolaj Wammen, how did you two meet?
Well, actually, the first time we met was, I was pretty new in the job as Minister of Defense, and Rufus was pretty new in the job as ambassador to Denmark. And I had read about him, and we had a meeting, and I said to my staff, normally, when you have an ambassador coming, there will be people on both sides of the table, it will be pretty formal. And I said, this time I'll just take it as a one-on-one meeting. I wanted to find out who this guy really was. And he came in, and we talked about very serious issues, NATO and the war against terrorism. And we did that in a professional way, I believe. And then we started to talk about US politics and life. And pretty soon, what happened was that we laughed, and we laughed pretty hard. So when the meeting ended, and Rufus had gone, the secretaries and the staff said, "What were you laughing about?" And I said, "He's just a great guy. I want to see this ambassador anytime he wants to have a meeting. Please arrange it." And it was also what in the movie Casablanca, there is a scene at the very end where they are saying to each other, "This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." And it pretty much was.
Nikolai had been one of the things we talked about that day. Nikolai went to high school for a year, just about a half an hour from where I grew up in Massachusetts, and it was just it's one of those wonderful moments, and it's what I mean. I know it sounds, but it just becomes, you realize this was minister to ambassador, very formal in that way. But what always matters in life is human to human. It was actually us getting to know each other as people, which actually made us both better at our jobs, I think, at least interacting with each other.
You actually ended up getting to be so good friends that you invited Nikolai Wammen and his wife to your wedding.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. It was, well, yeah, absolutely. No, they've become really, and I've been to cocktail parties at your home in Copenhagen, and yeah.
But as I understood, you didn't show up to his wedding.
No,
I did. I'm
still a little mad about that.
I had a good excuse, though. I did, and you should. I felt so terrible, but it was the night of the state dinner at the White House, or it was so I couldn't do both the wedding and the state dinner at the White House.
So Obama.
I know. It's just terrible. We felt we were thinking, okay, if we left the White House early, we could wear our tuxes on the plane and then go straight to Nikolai and Karen's wedding. But it just, we couldn't make it. But I think he would understand the excuse.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that both Rufus and Stephen are so good friends. And it was really also an experience to be at your wedding, because there was so much love in the air, and the whole atmosphere was people coming from the US, your family, and also Danish friends. And it was, of course, in a way, a very American wedding, but also with Danish traditions. And I'm not sure whether
You're laughing. What Danish traditions? I wasn't there, so what Danish traditions?
What happened was that I think Rufus was a little surprised that you take the shoes off people. And the socks were taken care of. You didn't know that in advance, I think.
No, I learned about it a little bit before they actually did it.
You hit that pretty well.
I literally, 10 minutes before they picked me up. But it was so funny because I was wearing my tux on New Year's Eve this year, and I reached in the back pocket and I found the tip of my sock from the wedding because I wanted to keep it. It was great. Absolutely. It's one of the things we've loved to do. I think, so what's been really one of the most enriching experiences that I think both Stephen and I have had here has been to just immerse ourselves in Danish culture. So yes, this was a very American wedding in so many ways, but we really wanted to do it the Danish way as well. We wanted to do it at Copenhagen City Hall, and experience so much of, there were lots of different things, the standing up on the chair and the stomping of the feet and all this kind of people, you leave the room, and I forget, there are all sorts of rules that I've now forgotten. But all the Danes in the room insisted on doing all the Danish wedding traditions. But it's more than that. It's the julefrokost and the påskefrokost and the St. Hans aftens, and I mean, we've sung so many different snap songs alongside of all of you. I don't know what I'm saying most of the time, but they're great fun.
Nikolai Wammen, I also understand that Rufus Gifford made you famous at the White House.
Sure.
I love this.
How did that work out?
Well, it was not easy, I can tell you that. No, as a Minister of Defense, I was on an official visit to Washington, and one of the meetings I had was with the National Security Advisor for President Obama. And her office is actually in the West Wing of the White House. And I arrived at the West Wing, and there were people coming in and out. And on the way into the White House, a staff member points at me saying, "I know who you are." And I was like, this is Washington, D.C. This is the White House. So I said to him, "That's very kind of you, but I sincerely doubt that." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, yes, I know who you are." And I said, "Okay, who am I?" "You're the Danish Minister of Defense." And I said, "How on earth do you know that?" And he said, "That's easy. I saw you on the Rufus Gifford show. And so
Love that.
already at that time, Rufus was a celebrity in the US, and I had a little of his fame headed my way. And actually, going over here today, I saw that CNN has a piece of you being this diplomat with your own television show. And what I believe is important to say about that is, yes, it has made you a rock star in Denmark, but it's because you are the person you are, and Stephen is the person he is. It is not something that any ambassador could do. And whoever follows the two of you will have some pretty big shoes to fill. And and even though you dodged the question a little bit earlier, which is fair enough, I dare say that I'm sure that the two of you will come back to not only Denmark, but also to Aarhus quite often. And I would love to see the day when President Rufus Gifford and the first man, Stephen, comes to Aarhus and Denmark.
That'll be the day.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jacob and I will run your campaign here now.
Perfect. Well, Nicolai Wammen, thank you very much for
you.
sharing your stories and showing us your friendship. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a quick question. We're going to switch the microphones here. So we have a quick question from Pia that says, "Hi, Rufus. Is there a thing you want to bring home to the States from Denmark, and why?" I remember something about blankets from last time you were here.
No, there's no. But this should be Stephen's answer. So we should have Stephen answer this question.
Well,
when you
then
get
let's
up
bring
here.
Stephen up here. Come on
Because
up.
that would steal his answer. What do we want to bring home?
Stephen de
I don't know.
Vincent.
What are we bringing home?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you want to bring home?
It's already packed. So we have, Hygge is what we're bringing home. One of many things, but Hygge, I would say, is probably the most Danish thing we're bringing home.
And how do you pack that?
It's already packed up here. Exactly. It's, I guess it's more a sort of a emotional idea, but it's true that we were so used to going to friends' homes and to restaurants and cafes in the fall, and then in the winter, of course, where you have blankets behind the chairs, so you can keep warm whether or not it's in the middle of the winter and it's cold and raw. It could even be raining, but you're still there with your blankets and your candles, as here. So actually, I had shipped over from the United States a couple of years ago about 10 American handmade antique quilts. So at Rådhus in our backyard, our tables that we had on the patio, excuse me, that's what we did. We had American quilts hanging behind the chairs, and so they were part of our life here in Rådhus, and so they'll come back with us to the States. So they're probably the archetypal item for Hygge. Besides, we have a lot more candles and a lot more candlesticks than we ever did before, too. Yes.
Our house looks like it's just like almost a Georg Jensen showroom at this point with all the candlesticks we have. We're going to try to make our house just, we'll try to make our house as hyggelig as possible everywhere we go. Because I think as an American, the perspective on hygge is maybe even a little different. We love it when we see it, and it's just so different for us, but we just have really grown to appreciate it, I think. And as Americans, we're so often looking into the future, thinking far ahead. Who can we be? What can we be? How can we get something bigger and nicer? And what the lovely part about hygge to me is that it's you appreciating the moment with the lighting of a candle or appreciating a great conversation with a friend or whatever, or your family. And I know I need to be better at that going forward. So we'll bring hygge home, and lots of other things, by the way.
Yeah. True.
Black licorice. Have you come to
No,
like that?
no, not so much.
No. I don't know very many Americans who like that.
Flilibola?
Yeah, but we can't.
Definitely. We'll bring that home.
We
That
can't
might
bring them
be
home.
hard.
They explode. They
I've
explode on
exploded the
planes.
airplane.
Yeah, I can't do that.
We did learn that. We learned that the hard way one Christmas.
First Christmas.
Yeah.
Stephen, I've seen some of the interviews with you where you have talked about the end of Rufus Gifford's time as an ambassador, and you've gotten quite emotional. What is it about leaving that?
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll read that in a minute.
Okay.
What is it about leaving that?
So you're baiting me. Do you want me to get emotional?
Can you
again,
please
right?
cry? Does it sound like that? No. Damn.
I think for us, so we talk about Denmark, we talk about Rudhæver, as we just spoke about. So people ask us, what that experience has been like. And so if you might have seen me get emotional before, it's when I talk about, especially talking about home. So Rudhæver is home to us. The physical structure is home. But Rudhæver for us very much embodies all that we loved about being in Denmark, in the sense of we had so many hundreds and thousands of Danes and Americans come through the doors and share with us moments. It might be family who came over for our wedding, or maybe just friends for a quick dinner, the backyard, the patio, this tables I just mentioned, the 4th of July celebration in the backyard for 2,000 people, or Halloween for 3,000. Whatever it is, we have created a home. And so in the U.S. oftentimes you speak of, it's not a house, but it's a home. And so a house is the structure. A home is something different. That's more of an emotional connection. And so I think that's what Rudhæver has been, but also that's what Denmark is. This is the longest we've been together in one place, 3.5 years. And we got married here. My father passed away when I was here. My mother passed away when I was in Denmark. But there are so these very seminal moments in our lives, with the wedding being the most, of course. And so, then it's Danes, and so they have, for us to call it home, you have to have welcomed us. And so you have welcomed us into your home, and home is Denmark. So it's a multi-layered description where Rudhæver, but also Denmark. And so again, as Rufus said, we've been embraced so totally and warmly received by Danes that it truly is home for us. And we don't know what that will look like when we go back to the States, but we know we have it here.
It's the longest you've lived together.
In one place.
In one place. Do you plan to continue that somewhere else, or are you going back to the old ways, or?
Yeah. The beginning of our relationship was very complicated because I met Stephen. Stephen worked at the State Department before I did. I had just moved to Washington to work in the Obama administration, and Stephen was living in Washington working at the State Department as an Arctic polar bear expert. Truly. And we met, and he was planning on leaving to go back to Massachusetts, and I convinced him to stay. And then I moved to Chicago to help run the president's re-election campaign. And Stephen had got a job in D.C., so then I moved to Chicago. Stephen stayed in D.C.
for a year.
Then you came to Chicago to join me a year later, and then we lived in Chicago for a year together. And then I moved back to D.C., you moved to Massachusetts, and then we both moved to Denmark together. We've lived here for 3.5 years.
So is it time for your career now? Are you gonna follow Stephen for the next job, or is it the other way around? This is kind of like couples counseling.
No, it's all good.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So before we came over to Denmark, he did say to me that, okay, next it's your turn. I could decide where we're going to live next. And, I would probably say Africa or the Arctic. But
which is pretty much the same.
It's pretty much the same. But I think, as we've talked about before, we need to go home, and we need to go home and fight. And so I think Rufus is in a better position to do that, in a sense, if he either runs for political office, or if he doesn't do that, then it's a little more open to, I could potentially still decide where we live. But if he runs for political office, it would be in Massachusetts, and so we would be there, which just happens to be home, and you may know that both of us grew up in Massachusetts, so that's easy. But also, if that was the case, actually, I would probably still work in the same veterinary practice I did before I met Rufus, so I would still get sort of what I wanted out of it as well. But yes, if he's not running for office, still kind of doing the fight, whether it be in media that he's involved in, but politics as well, I'll have much more of a say than if he decides to run for political office. But I'm willing to make that sacrifice maybe one more time, because we both, as he said obviously earlier, so both firmly believe that we need to, as much as we can, protect the Obama legacy. And so I'm willing to make that sacrifice, because that, to us, is most important.
So what is the plan now? You mentioned New Zealand and then the States?
Yeah. We, on the 20th, we fly to New Zealand. I have, so the longest, so I have not, so we're taking about a 3-week vacation. I haven't had a 3-week vacation since I was at university. So this will be a long one.
Makes
for me.
2 of us.
Yeah, university.
And I went to university long before he did.
So we're going to 3 places I've never been. So, or a few different, 3 stops in New Zealand, Sydney, and the Great Barrier Reef. And then we're leaving Argus the dog here, actually. So we're coming back here.
Not in Aarhus. No, he's
oh, sorry, in Denmark. Yeah. And we're coming back to Denmark and spending 2 weeks as private citizens. So
you think, but once people spot you,
well, though I am going to have to learn how to ride the bus. My job says Stephen rides the bus all the time, and I don't. So there's always an open door of an armored car waiting to pick me up everywhere I go. So it will be a different reality for me, but it's going to be lovely. It will be different, but exciting. So we look forward to just being back here for a couple of weeks and spending time with some friends, and we'll fly back to the States for good on the 26th of February, I think.
And we initially will be going to Rufus' parents have a summer home, and it's empty. It's the middle of the winter. And so we don't have a a place to go to. So that's going to be our house for a while. Argus, so the 3 of us will be there and use it as our base until we decide what our next steps are. And from that point, from that location, we will then move to wherever we will go for where our jobs take us.
I think it's really important in the way I think about this. So as I think I said early on, I've worked for Obama for 10 years. I am really tired. So it's the idea that I just can't, while I'm still in the midst of this experience. I mean, I'm kind of emotionally tired based on everything that's happened the last few months. And I think it's important to have a little bit of perspective before we make these big decisions about the next few years of our lives. So the goal is actually just to, exhale, read a book, which I don't do nearly enough of, and just kind of center ourselves before we make some of these big decisions. So that's what we're going to try to do. That's do
you think that'll work, Stephen, or will he, after 3 weeks in New Zealand and 2 weeks here, he'll just hit the ground running in America?
I don't think he'll hit the ground running, but I do think he won't relax as much as he says he will relax.
Stephen calls me a caged bird. So anytime I'm stuck in the apartment, or our old apartment, our house now is really nice, I just literally will just walk around I need something to do, something to focus on. I have too much energy. It's just the way I'm programmed, unfortunately.
Well, I know my boss has an offer for you. Not working at the TV. Well, maybe if you wanted to work at the TV station, you could, but don't worry, Rufus, you can follow the opening of Aarhus 2017 on our live stream.
From New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. We're so looking forward to being here, but on the 21st. But I think we'll actually be in the air somewhere between London and Sydney at that time.
On the 24th.
But we've heard the plans. Viking ships coming. I don't think that's a secret, is it?
Not anymore.
I hope not. I've heard the plans are very exciting and extensive. And I wish we were going to be here. I hope I didn't just blow a huge secret on Danish television. Oh well. But it's really lovely.
We won't tell that many people.
No, of course not.
Perfect. Well, you know what? I think we will let the audience ask you some questions too. So please stay here, Stephen. Mm-hmm. And you want to answer that question? I'm looking over here because we have the Twitter thing. It says, what are you not going to miss
about our country?
Black licorice was one thing.
I mean, people are going to expect me to say these boring answers like the weather. Of course, you're not going to miss the weather. Days like today are so miserable. But you all know that too. I mean, Danes are fully aware of it. It's so, I think that it's not really so much though what I'm not going to miss. What are you not going to miss? Do you have an answer to that?
I'm waiting for you to hear yours.
It'll be things. I remember waking up. I do remember waking up this morning, and I was awake, but it was still 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go give a speech, and it was still dark. And that's right, on January. I do think this month of the year in Denmark is exceptionally depressing. So I think that, I'm fine in December for whatever reason because of all the Christmas lights. The Christmas lights and the New Year's fireworks and all that. That's fantastic. But January comes and you just realize that it is a long, dark, dreary month.
I commented on the same thing this morning, driving my kids to school at 8 o'clock. I said, it's still dark.
It's so dark. But I will say this, as the eternal optimist as I am, last week, there were those magnificent sunrises. So because it was clear. And those beautiful clear days in January where the sun never gets that high above the horizon, but it's sort of orange all day long. I love that. I loved it. I love those crisp, cold days in January. It's kind of what we're used to based on where we grew up. Look, I'll say this one thing that is, it's really, and I said this, I said this on Facebook. I think that I want Danes to give, it's more this. I want Danes to understand your place in the world more than you do. And I think I can say it as an American, but it's, and Stephen says this too. And I think that it's this concept of so many Danes will walk up to us and they'll say, what sort of lead with, but you're just a small country. But we're just a small country. Where do we matter in the world? And that drives us crazy as people who've lived here for 3.5 years and understand what your place in the world is. And this is coming from the richest and most powerful nation on earth, blah, 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 blah. We know that. But the contributions that Denmark has made to the world are profound. And I'm not just talking about, the big businesses you've built. It's, Lego and Vestas and Maersk and all the rest. It's wonderful. It's more than that. It's actually about values. And, and some examples of this. After the oil crisis in the 70s, countries around the world made a determination, and they essentially kind of doubled down on drilling, oil drilling, and just like we did. And then we had some diversification. We all know the challenges that the rest of Europe has had about lack of diversification in energy. And what did Denmark do? Denmark invested in something like wind. Now, and you could almost see the oil guys just laughing behind their backs at the crazy Scandinavians who actually think that they're going to get enough electricity from the wind to keep the lights on. And look where you are now. Everybody else wants to be where Denmark is. Every other country in the world. And why? Because you led. They were your values. Those are Scandinavian values that have truly fundamentally changed the world.
in the green, with the Green Revolution. And I just hope you keep doing it. And so when I see the politics of the day, and I see that there's so many political factors coming in that are trying to make every country in the world pull back from the world stage and not aggressively export their values, I would just think it would be such a shame that if Denmark pulled back. I think what you have given to the world over and over again is profound, and I want to see that continue. So, and as Americans, just know that we feel that way about you, and we know you pretty well from having lived here for 3.5 years.
And I think with that, just the idea that we got married in Copenhagen City Hall, this is the first country in the world that had same-sex unions, and so it led the way in that as well. And Rufus has said more than once before that if Denmark had not done that, so who knows when it would have happened. It might have happened by now, but it might not. Might not have. But you were the first, and so we always want Danes to be proud of that, because that's how we describe Danes to Americans. Yes. All the time. And so we hope you do. Yeah, I hope you do the same. So, yeah.
Can I tell one more story? Or are we out of time? No, I need to tell one more story real quick because it's actually really important. Because
quick story.
Yeah, really quick, but it's not really that fast. So, but I'll do it. I'll do it as quickly as possible. But because I heard it in a very special place, and I heard it at the White House, and I heard it in May at the State Dinner. And this is just another example of what Denmark has done for the world, as well as what real human connection can actually bring to the world. So there was an American named Miles Horton, who actually, he lived in Chicago, and there was a Danish guy, he was a Danish priest named Father Mortensen, who was traveling in Chicago. These two men met. Father Mortensen was one of the leading proponents of the Højskole movement here in Denmark. These two guys became friends. Father Mortensen told Miles Horton about the Højskoles and brought Miles Horton to Denmark. Miles Horton then spent some time traveling around the country with Father Mortensen, learning more and more and more about the Højskole movement here. Miles Horton then moved back to the States and went to Tennessee. And he founded something called the Highlander Folk High School in Tennessee. The Highlander Folk High School was instrumental in the civil rights movement. It educated people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. So there we were, underneath the sky at the White House, on the South Lawn, with the President of the United States in front of the Danish Prime Minister, essentially saying, and he said this, I very well may never have been president, were it not for this one meeting between one Dane and one American. And that's pretty, as an ambassador, that's pretty damn special as far as I'm concerned. So.
Let's have a question.
Has it changed your view on the U.S. to live here in Denmark?
Yes. Do you want to take that first?
You can.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think any time you live away from your country, you actually, in some ways, you appreciate it more. And you also see that you see everything is kind of exaggerated. You see you realize what you miss, but also what could get better anytime you experience another culture. So there's parts of the U.S. that I think, I mean, it's kind of, there's certain things about the United States that I would like to see us try to export more of, certain ideals in essence. And there are certain things about Denmark that I say, oh my God, the United States culture, society would work so much better if we could figure out how to make this kind of system inside Danish society kind of implement that more effectively. So I do think it gives you a perspective that you didn't have before. Yeah.
I think some of the things, the healthcare system, and you can complain about it in Denmark, but certainly, we are fighting to keep Obama's legacy going. What is that? Is Obamacare, and what does that mean? That is healthcare for everyone, free healthcare for everyone, and, free schools as well. those types of things that, again, you can't make a direct, parallel from a country of your size to the United States. But those are things that we value in Danish society because it works, and I believe it's a fundamental right. They should have, right to education, in healthcare, and many others. And so Denmark has that, and so it is an example of, yes, it can work. And if we can find a way to extrapolate that to the United States, then we'd be a far better off country.
And one thing I'll say just on the sort of opposite of this, obviously the immigration debate in Europe is something very, very much in focus right now. And we have enormous challenges on immigration still, but we've been dealing with it for 400 years. Both Stephen and I are immigrants to the U.S. My family came 400 years ago, but we're still immigrants fighting for the same things that immigrants now coming to the U.S. Are fighting for, which is fleeing religious persecution. So I do think that when it comes to understanding kind of the value that kind of an immigrant society, the value of an immigrant-based society, I think we have a lot to teach Europeans on this, frankly. And I know that's a politically charged thing to say, but I think we do. For all of the flaws that we still have, and we are far from perfect, and I say this fully understanding the rhetoric that our president-elect has used on this issue. But I think it's actually something that we can continue to talk about. I say it this way, that we've been dealing with this issue for 400 years. You've been dealing with it for 40. But I hope that we will continue to lean on each other as we try to solve those challenges. And in fact, I bring this back home to Aarhus real quick, because we are actually partnering with the city on what we call it a CVE conference, which is a Countering Violent Extremism conference. Aarhus has gotten attention worldwide for your approach to dealing with radicalization. What we have seen at the embassy over the years is different city officials from Aarhus traveling to places like Minneapolis or Columbus, Ohio, or something like that, that have dealt with similar issues inside various communities, and dealing with it as a whole of society approach. And these are things that I hope that we can, Danish society in some ways can learn from us, and vice versa. And I think all of it is a conversation. But there's this big conference in May that we're sponsoring. I got the plug in, Billy. Yeah.
That'll be $1,000, please.
Yeah.
All right, we have a few minutes left. Do we have any more questions here?
Yeah, I was wondering, I think that Obama chose you because of the Danish mindset on gay marriage and so on. Do you believe it as well?
I think that I don't believe that he chose me specifically for Denmark because of that. I think that as you're putting together this incredibly complicated puzzle of which ambassadors go to which countries, he actually, so this is the thing, you may not know this about Barack Obama, he has a genuine fondness for the Scandinavian cultures, for the exact same reasons that Stephen and I just talked about, that he views you as problem solvers, and that they don't get weighted down in sort of the bureaucracy and the politics of the moment, and he views you as leaders in the world. And I think, I don't think it became about me being gay and the progressive politics of Denmark. I think it was a little bit more broad than that. But fundamentally, when we negotiated with the White House about where I was going to go, it was kind of a mutual decision, in fairness. Yeah.
What I was thinking about was that, for example, you going to, I don't know, a country where it's not that acceptable.
Yeah.
Then he knew that, okay, in Denmark, Rufus and Stephen would have a good time and they would be accepted and so on. Instead of another country where not that like that.
Sure, I will say this. I think I don't know. I think it might have been part of it. I think, but the truth is, we have gay ambassadors in countries around the world that are actually given a very hard time. We have a gay ambassador to the Dominican Republic right now, who they had the cardinal of Santo Domingo, the capital. They had a day of mourning when he arrived, and everybody had to wear black armbands, and they called him like anti-gay slurs and stuff. And it was actually interesting. The White House stood by him aggressively. And the question, you could still say, oh gosh, this might not have been the best idea. You could say, I think it's a great idea, because he's changed hearts and minds in the Dominican Republic, unlike anyone else could have on this issue. But I don't think the Obama administration would have been afraid to send me to Russia or the Middle East. But I don't know that we would have liked it as much.
True.
Well, time is running out, so we're going to end with an invitation for you to come back once.
Oh, no.
Well, I was
they
took
away the invitation.
Took it away.
Took the invitation
not
away.
anymore.
They retracted the invitation.
Aarhus Pride Parade for 2017.
We're back. There we go.
It's back.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's lovely.
Mr. Ambassador
you.
Stephen DeVincent, thank you both so much for talking with us tonight, and we wish you all the best for your future.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.